I'm tired. I'm whooped after a long week, and I'll be honest, I'm looking forward to going home after this and taking a nap. It's been a very long week. For those of you who don't know, I was with our mission team that went to New Orleans for the past week. We left late Sunday, got in at about 12:30 Monday morning, and started with 6 o'clock, 6:30 mornings each day, Monday through Friday, and got back early yesterday morning. Had worship last night, and then the 2 services today. So I'm going to try to get a nap in before I have to come back for worship this evening. But it was a great week, full of great, if not exhausting, work for us. We had a group of about 18 people, exactly 18 people that were there. We worked all in all on 2 different houses, doing some spackling, some painting. We laid some floors and hung doors and painted inside and outside of the houses. We ended up working at a community center for a few days with a Head Start program. Even worked with horses for a couple days and planted trees down by the levees, both for beauty of the neighborhood, but also to help protect the soil from future storms. We woke up every morning at 6:30 and were on the job site by 8 o'clock each morning. The days were long and we passed out more than slept every night. It was exhausting. And there were lots of amazing, great experiences for us. But maybe the thing that set the tone best, for me at least, was on the plane ride down. I was reading this article that was just absolutely fascinating to me. It's an article about a man named David Furch, I think his last name is pronounced. And David is an amazing guy who is very adventurous. He's a world traveler. He lives in a cabin that is off in the middle of nowhere in the woods. You can't even drive to it. You have to hike to it. He's an avid mountain biker who rides his bike through the city and also up across mountainscapes, on cliffs and across ravines. Lives independently and on his own and is really this adventurous traveler, which doesn't seem like all that much until you realize that David is blind. He was born with sight, but had a rare form of ocular cancer, and his eyeballs had to be removed when he was 3 years old. But David didn't want to be different from everyone else, and he didn't want to walk with a cane, and he didn't want to have to walk with a guide dog. But he was bound and determined that he would be independent. So he developed something that all of us have, but we don't use very often. We use our own form of sonar, of echolocation. Every time somebody calls your name from a distance, from behind you, 99 times out of 100, you know which way to turn when you hear a voice, right? We don't think about it, but that's our ears doing echolocation, figuring out where an object is based on where the sound is coming from. So David designed this kind of routine. Whenever he walks into a room, he makes a clicking sound with his tongue. Now to us, that seems like nothing, but to him, the sound reverberates off of all of the items that are in the room around him. And he's developed his echolocation technique and honed his ears well enough that he can get a mental picture of where everything is. Knows where all the items in the room are. When he's outside, he can tell you if the car in front of him is a truck or a compact or a motorcycle. Knows how far away the mailbox is. Knows where the steps are in the street in front of him. Can find his way around without any kind of location device at all. He hikes for miles through the woods without any assistance whatsoever. He takes his mountain bike through the city, takes it on ravines, takes it off of cliffs, all without eyesight. He sticks little zip ties in the back spokes of his wheels so that he can hear where his bike's going as it goes down the path. It's unbelievable that he's able to do all this, that he can live that independently without any kind of outside assistance. And the interviewer, the writer of the piece, was asking him how he got to develop this and how he can be so bold and so brave to go out without any use of his eyes. And he said, well, for me, the first step was to understand and to come to grips with the fact that I was going to run into a lot of telephone poles. And I was going to run into signs from time to time. David's broken his nose more than a few times. He's walked into walls quite a number of times and knocked out his teeth. But he said, you know, in the grand scheme of things, I'd rather knock out my teeth every once in a while than live a life where I can't be independent, where I can't go out and do exciting things, where I can't be adventurous. You know, a broken nose, a tooth here and there, it's worth it to me. I thought it did when we arrived at the camp on Sunday night. We walked in there at about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were shown to our quarters. Now, I knew we were staying at a place called Camp Restore, and I kind of envisioned a camp, you know, campfires and sing-alongs and all that kind of stuff, but that's not what it was at all. What happened is a church, a Prince of Peace Lutheran Church down in New Orleans. It's in the 9th Ward, not far away from where the worst flood destruction was. And after the flood, Prince of Peace realized that they had to change their focus as a church, and they had to find a way that they could reach out to the community. So when you walk into their sanctuary, they don't have pews, they don't have carpeting, it's all tile floor, beautiful organ, beautiful altar area, but it's set up as a cafeteria and a meeting place for all the workers and all the volunteers that are coming down to New Orleans. When you walk into their backyard, it's filled with trailers, these big storage bins, the kinds that you would see on like a ship for major storage. They were marked that they had come from Nebraska. They were all donated goods, supplies that were sent down to the flood victims right after Katrina had come through. Except Prince of Peace held on to them, and they cut doors into the sides of each of the storage containers, and it was explained to us that that's where we were staying for a week. It's about 7 feet by 20 feet, divided into 2 rooms with 8 people in each side. Not enough room to have your suitcases on the floor and still be able to walk. We had to stack them on top of one another. Every time I rolled over, the guys joked that it sounded like somebody was shooting a BB gun because you could hear the springs popping in the mattress beneath us. We saw the bathrooms, and besides a shower that was definitely smaller than this pulpit area, the facilities didn't even have doors to them. The men's room, the stalls just had a shower curtain that went across the front. Your toes stuck out underneath. That's how you knew if it was occupied or not. We got up for breakfast each morning, and it was the same kind of powdered eggs and sausage recycled from the night before and reheated. I got very tired of garlic bologna that we had for lunch every day. The conditions were different than we could have ever dreamt, and much more difficult than we had anticipated. And as we walked into that place, you could see it on the faces of everyone in our group. It was like walking into a wall for them. It was uncomfortable, it was scary even, and it was anxious for all of us. But it was the exact kind of setup, it was the exact kind of situation that opened us up to a whole new adventure, a whole new understanding, because we got just a small taste of what the residents there were living every day. As we drove through their neighborhoods each day, as we saw these bombed out houses, as we went to go to Walmart and realized that not only was Walmart closed, Walmart wasn't there. It was just a vacant lot there for us. We realized that that was their reality each and every day. It was like our eyes were open for the first time. We could really see the world in a totally different way than we had experienced up here in Long Island. It was an amazing openness that we had that was so much more than just putting up some walls, so much more than just laying down some floor in somebody's house. It was all about the conversations that we were having with people. People who had left New Orleans who really didn't want to come back, but had to, because their bill collectors weren't leaving them alone in Mississippi, and they needed to come back and rebuild because they had nowhere else to go. People who were praying every day for some kind of help, something to help them get back into their houses, to help them get food put on their tables, to help them just get by for one more day. It was really interesting to talk to a friend of mine who lives in New Orleans now. We moved there 4 years ago, not long after the flood. He's a social worker who does all kinds of different work in the city. And he was talking about where the city was and how much the city has come along. There was still a ways to go, but he said it's amazing how far we've come these days. And a British guy said in his British accent, thanks to do-gooders like you who keep coming down and helping. People like you who haven't forgotten 5 years later that we're still here, that we still need help. And it made me realize that an old kind of cliche story that gets forwarded around by email all the time. A person dies and they're standing at the pearly gates and she says to God, I just have one question for you. I know that you love us, I know that you care for us, and I know that you want good things for us, but God, why are there hungry people in the world? Why are there homeless people in the world? Why are there people who are suffering, who don't have enough? Why didn't you do something to help them? And God lovingly looked at her and said, I did do something. I made you. Going down to New Orleans and being pulled out of our comfort zone, being knocked in the mouth with the reality of what life is like for other people, made us realize that what Jesus is talking about in our gospel isn't just saying, don't worry about anything. He's not just trying to calm people and placate them. What Jesus is saying is that there are people who are hungry in the world. There are people who are thirsty. There are people who need to be cared for. But that we are the answer to their prayers. There are people who are praying for just a little bit more food to get them by. And we're the ones who are called to answer that for them. And the great thing about that message is you don't have to get on an airplane. You don't have to fly to New Orleans. You don't have to go across the world. Because I guarantee this moment, as we're gathered here in worship, there's somebody praying. There's somebody praying for food for their table. There's somebody who's praying for enough money to cover rent for this month. There's somebody who doesn't know where they're going to sleep tonight. There's somebody who's alone. There's somebody who's hurting. There's somebody who needs someone to show just a little bit of compassion, a little bit of openness, just a little bit of love. And that person is right outside of our door. That person is less than a mile away. That person is here in our community. And you are the answer to their prayer. You are the one that can make a difference in their life. You're the one that can be that difference maker. You're the one that can change their lives through the smallest, seemingly insignificant things. A kind word, a nice gesture, a moment of your time. The sharing of just a little bit of what you have can make all the difference in the world. And it can be uncomfortable from time to time. And it's hard to open yourself up. It's hard to reach out because sometimes you get knocked in the mouth. Sometimes you get knocked down, and sometimes you feel like you're blind and you don't know which way you're going. And it's tiring. And it's unsettling. And it's anxiety causing. But it's exactly what God has called us to. I'm tired, but I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Because it's a feeling that God has worked through me. God wants to work through each and every one of you. Amen.